Hello and welcome to Book Lovers Companion, the podcast about books, authors, the craft, and more. I'm your host Edith, and joining me from across the pond is author, college professor, and horsewoman Jess Bowers. Jess, hello and welcome to Book Lovers Companion.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for making time for me. And as I said, horsewoman, because I'm asking, it's a question mark at the end of that, because the title of your book is Horseshoe. So are you a horsewoman?
I am. And it's actually really kind of fortuitous that you're calling from Vienna, Austria, because my horse is a haflinger. He's my second haflinger. I am a devotee of the breed. So I understand they're a source of great national pride over there. And it's one of my dreams to go and see where they breed at the Fohlenhof. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say the halflingers are more a thing in the eastern part, the western part of Austria, because in the mountain regions, and and they are still used by our Bundesheer or army in the mountainous regions for transport, because that's the only way how you can transport your equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And they are still going, yes, with the halflingers, indeed.
They're remarkable animals. They are so. I fell in love with the breed, and I've been a horse person since I was a little kid, since I was around 12. And I'm the only equestrian in my family, which is kind of unusual. But it's just been a lifelong obsession, passion, something that I just can't stop doing. So I think any other equestrians listening will know what that's like.
And do you also enjoy our imperial whites? Because that's what you will see here in Vienna. That's what Vienna is famous for.
Yeah. No. The Lipizaners. Yes. Yes. Grew up watching videos of them many, many times. Yes. So Austria has an amazing horse culture, I think.
It does. Yeah, and if you go outside of Vienna in the south, Styria, that's where they are bred.
Oh, really? That's wonderful.
You can visit the stables.
Oh.
And during the summer month, they go to Lower Austria on a sort of summer vacation. You know, when it's hot in the city, they have their summer vacation outside of Vienna. And these days they have changed. They've also changed a few years ago. They have changed the stables, because when you are in Vienna and you go past the stables, you can look inside, because they put up huge glass windows, and you can look inside the stables.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so neat. Yeah, I have to go someday. I have to go.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's the best part about Vienna.
Yeah.
One of the best parts of Vienna.
Yes.
I have to admit, dear listeners, I'm not a horse person.
I
mean, of course, my book features prominently also a horsewoman, but I know nothing about horses.
Right. Yeah. I think they capture the imagination, though, don't they? I think even for people who don't have direct experience with them, there's something really evocative about horses and the role that they've played in the development of modern culture. I think everyone, even if they're not a horse person, is kind of drawn to them in some way.
In a way, because they are beautiful creatures. They're awe-inspiring and they're fascinating. Although I'm sometimes mean to my students, I have to admit it. I'm outing myself now. I'm sometimes mean to my students, to the girls who love riding and they go to the stables every day. And I told them, the best way to have a horse is in a roll, because horse flesh is also. I say, you are awful. Yes, I know.
Yes. Oh. I don't know if I could resist that joke either, in a country where people ate horse meat. I don't know if I could resist it either. So,
I mean, this special kind of horse meat is the best one. I mean, what can I say? This is the best. Sorry about that, dear horse lovers, but it still does.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not eating horses here, and
No.
I do not have a horse inside two halves of a roll right now. I'm just having my lemonade here. Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
But Jess, we are here to talk about your book, your collection of short stories.
Mhm.
And may I ask, can you tell our listeners a little bit about this collection of short stories?
Yes. So, my debut collection, Horse Show, it was named one of the most exciting debut collections of 2024 by Electric Literature, which I was pretty excited about. And my rule, as I was composing the book, was that I wanted to write something that was kind of had the same sort of spiritual goal as Black Beauty in terms of calling attention to the abuse or mistreatment of horses, but I didn't want it to read like Black Beauty. I wanted it to be about particularly the role that horses play in entertainment, in spectacle. And so my only rule that I had as I was composing the collection was that every story had to have a horse of some kind, right? Whether it's a mechanical horse or sometimes it's a mule, right? And then it had to have a show of some kind, as broadly interpreted as I could take it. So there are stories about amusement park rides. There's a story about the John Travolta film The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, which has a horse in it. There are stories about sort of carnival sideshow type situations and all that sort of thing. Mr. Ed gets a story as well, the famous American sitcom. So yeah, I really wanted to just call attention to the ways in which we sort of spectacularize horses and bring them into our entertainment visually. And along the way, it sort of evolved into mistreatment or misunderstanding of horses, misunderstanding of sentient beings, as a whole, which then allowed me to get at some other issues of sort of, marginalization or abuse that humans experience too, right? So that was sort of the impetus for the book, and it came out of I had stubbornly avoided, I'm sure you've heard before the adage, write what you know, right? And I had stubbornly avoided that for a long, long time, about 3 decades. And I finally just wrote one of the stories in the collection and brought it to my workshop in graduate school, and everybody went nuts. They were like, "This is amazing. I want to read more about this." And it was really an eye-opening moment for me to realize that that adage is true. That, I had grown up as weird horse kid, assuming that people who aren't horsey don't want to hear about this. But there was something about the way that I was telling the stories or perhaps the thread of history that flows through the collection, because all the stories are based on real real things that happened, that really sort of just seemed to resonate with people. And so it was really pleasurable for me to let myself write about horses, and that's sort of where the book kind of emerged.
It also is then write what you know, because you know horses.
Yes, yes, and I think with knowing horses comes the darker side of that too, yeah, there's a fair amount of bad things that happen to horses in my
Yeah.
book, which kind of surprises people sometimes, but I always tell people that you can't write an anti-war book without including some of the horrors of war, right? And so you can't write a book that is asking humans to consider their relationship to an animal that's often, mistreated without including some of that
Yeah.
mistreatment as well. Mhm.
Yeah.
So
I absolutely agree. How do you write about things that are not so good, not so nice? By avoiding them, you can't.
you can't. No.
It's
No.
simply not done. Absolutely,
No.
absolutely agree. And what you said about history and storytelling, it's very powerful. Storytelling is a powerful tool, and in we do always hope when we write stories and such that we might bring people to think. to change their point of view, or at least think about what they've read, if they are willing to let the story touch them.
Right.
And what I was reminded when you told about the stories and the history and what happened to horses, how humans treat them. It reminds me, of course, of World War One, where loads of horses, mules, and so on were used as part of the war machine, the war effort. You mentioned the haflingers,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
they are still used here in Austria as part of the army. Of course, the mountain Gebirgsjäger,
Yeah.
the mountaineers here in Austria. And I mean, First World War was incredible bad for horses.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
might have read the book for young adults by Michael Morpurgo, War Horse. I mean,
Yes.
and it's an incredible book.
An incredible play as well,
Yeah,
if you ever get the chance.
absolutely. Yes, I've seen it
Oh,
twice, and
wow.
it's
Yes. It's
fantastic.
so moving, and the
Yeah,
things that they do with the puppetry and
yeah,
the sort of oh my goodness. Yes. And see, and I loved that book, because, it came out when I was an adult, but I remember when I read it thinking, I would have loved this when I was a child. I
yeah.
would have loved honesty of
Mhm,
this book. Because even as a kid around horses, you very quickly learn that the fantasy isn't real, that you're not going to, as a little girl, you're not going to come upon this wild steed that no one else can ride and suddenly bond, and
mm,
like you learn very early on that that's just not true. And so there really aren't a lot of books for children that are
mm,
honest about the horse-human relationship, and so
yeah,
Warhorse, yeah, that really resonated with me because I was like, "Okay, this is being extremely honest about a time in history where humans do not come across the best, in relation to how they used this animal for their own purposes, but also just something very humane and human
mm,
about
mm,
the way that that book treats the relationship as well."
yeah, yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And may I ask, you said you tried to write it in the spirit of Black Beauty, not like Black Beauty, but in the sort of in the spirit of Black Beauty. My question
Yes.
also focus on on the fact that you had to do quite a bit of research to get to come to your stories or get inspiration for your stories. How did that how did
Yes.
that go for you? Because if people do research, they often say, I was nearly trapped in a rabbit hole because I couldn't stop researching."
Oh, well, my favorite, as I mentioned, I have a PhD in English, which taught me all the research skills that I needed to write this book. And so the ones that I gravitated to, the stories of the horses throughout history that I gravitated to were the ones where the rabbit hole only went so deep, right? Where
Yep.
there was room to extrapolate, explore. Like sometimes I would only have a photograph,
Mm,
like, the one story, Fred W. Loring and his mule, Evil
mhm,
Merodach, that started with that stereograph photograph that I reprint in
mhm,
the book, and from there, I was only really able to find, a lot of information about his death, but to find information about his life, I had to go, for all these, like, reprints of 19th century anthologies,
okay.
and, because like, his poetry and whatnot wasn't well published, so, yeah, I had to do a lot of digging, and it's sort of, I always say to people that this book couldn't have happened without the internet,
Mhm,
and I also don't know that I think that my, micro generation, right? I'm between Gen X and millennials. I think we have a pretty
ah,
interesting yeah, we have an interesting relationship to the internet in that, we're very good at making it do what we want, in terms of research and looking, in the less trodden paths, right? So, definitely used my institutional affiliation a lot,
yeah,
to go to archives and, look at, photographs and books that I wouldn't normally have access to. But, but then also by the same token, watching the same movie
Mhm.
a couple hundred times to get it right, as I'm writing about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I love research. I love research, and I think that definitely shows in the
Mm.
book. Is
Yeah.
that I'm so passionate about not just getting details right, but then also like if the story is set in the 19th century, I want
Mhm.
the language to feel like it's in the
Yeah.
19th century. Like I really I love research, and I think I'm pretty good at that moment where you go, "Okay, let's put this aside and let's open a document and let's start, right, this
Mhm.
story." But so many of my the way that I approach the story comes a lot from the
Yeah.
research and sort of what I
Okay.
find and what
Okay.
inspires me. So, yeah, lots of research, yes.
Yeah, there usually
Yeah.
is. If people say want to have a book that is set in the past and it's about historic events and such. And
Yes.
may I ask, you said it's all about horses, their relationship with humans, how we treated them, how we mistreated them, of course. Um,
Mhm.
on the not so nice part of this, what was the worst uh, bit of information you have discovered, but not included in your book?
Oh, gosh. Oh, well, one of the things that happens during the research process is, and I always tell my students this as well, my creative writing students, is that you have to get really good at knowing what's an anecdote and what's a story, right? And if something's an anecdote, you can't hang a whole short story on that. It's just an interesting tidbit, right? And one of the interesting tidbits that I found that I tried to write a story about and just could not find my way into it is there was this man who was kind of a socialite, and his name was Eben Byers, and he was famous as a tennis pro, and he began drinking radioactive water, and it made his bones kind of shatter and deteriorate, and it kind of made his whole face deteriorate.
Yeah.
But what I discovered is that he was actually giving this to his racehorses too. I know, and I was just really struck by the cruelty of that, the misguidedness of that, because he thought it was helping him, so he
Mm.
assumed that it would help them. Um,
Yeah.
just I was really struck by the image of like a horse sort of crumbling as it ran kind of thing. But again, anecdote, not story.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really find my way
Okay.
into that, and I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. I
Yes.
just yeah. Ugh,
Yeah.
that was a bit much
But
even for
I mean, one wonders what he thought and why he thought. I mean, even it's let's presume it's suppose it's true, or at least partly true. One wonders why.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in the late 19th, early 20th century, there was really a vogue for, putting radium or radiation into medical products, and it was just so poorly understood,
Mm,
until the Curies really kind of came and were
yeah.
like, "What?" You know? So I fell down that rabbit hole. There were, like, jugs that had radioactive material impregnated into the ceramic so that you would fill it with
Yeah, yeah.
water and would it's called the Revigorator. They all had these, like, wacky names too. Like, I'm really interested in quack medicine, so yeah, so that kind of, yeah, it was crazy, but, I think there was something there for me, like, in the thinking that you're doing good, but actually destroying something, but, as I said, I'm glad I abandoned that one. I think it was, maybe even too weird even for this
Mm,
book, which
yeah. Okay, I get it. Absolutely, I absolutely get it.
Yeah.
And looking back on your writing process, what would you say was your or for you the most touching
Ah.
story, the one that touched you the most?
Mm, mm, gosh. I think I mean, again, I think Fred Loring, this, failed queer poet who went west and got caught up in some things he didn't understand and had a really close relationship with a rented mule. I think that, I just really the more I read about him, the more, as an emerging writer, his story resonated with me, and
Mhm,
this idea that he would try to reinvent himself as a means of, you know, uh, self-actualizing, or I don't know, like, over the course of writing that story, and I just became really I felt really close to him, as a writer, like, writing about a writer, which is a thing
yeah,
that I don't do very
yeah,
often. So that was one that I think really struck me. And then, I think also, the steeplechase story, Two on a Horse, which is about the
mhm,
Coney Island steeplechase ride, incredibly dangerous carnival ride. That one contains, the characters in it are almost all fictionalized. They're almost all people that I made up.
mhm,
And so I had a really wonderful time imagining myself into, like, late 19th century Coney Island, and imagining particularly the women who would be riding this ride and the different things that it could mean to them, whether it was a site for danger and, sort of predatory behavior by men, or whether it was a site of freedom, like the last girl in that story who sort of, finds transcendence riding this
mm,
mechanical horse. Um, that the cycle of people that story moves through, it felt to me like I was in some sense telling the story of women, and yeah, and so that one I think really resonated with me too,
mhm.
and touched me on a deep level,
Okay.
but you know how it is, it's like they're all your babies, you know?
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Yes, of course they are, since it's your labor of love, as I always call it. It's understandable.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. Eh, I mean, it's fascinating. May I ask, since you are a horsewoman yourself, and I sometimes wonder because when you look at other animals, pets especially, like dogs or cats, there is always those poor animals also are viewed sometimes as an accessory. I mean, you can't use a horse as an accessory because, that's simply not possible. But still, i- i- is it the case that in horsemanship or in breeding horses, is there also this sort of fashion trend, or does that happen with horse breeding as well as it does with dogs or cats?
Yes,
Okay.
unfortunately, yes. Not, so much in the area of the horse world that I'm involved in, but,
Mhm,
particularly in America, the Arabian horse breeders have
mm,
gone completely nuts, in my opinion. So Arabians, what you're going for is a dishy face, which is sort of
mhm,
a concave face.
mhm,
So you want it to kind of like have this dishy look, and, it's very elegant and beautiful, and it's one of the things that makes the Arabian breed so cool.
mhm.
But
Okay.
some breeders in America have taken that to extremes, and they're creating, similar to like pug dogs, horses that can't breathe, that
Okay.
kind of
Yeah.
yeah. There's also, in the, halter horse community in the Western world over here
Okay.
in America, there is a disease that horses can get called HYPP, which is essentially it's a muscle disorder that causes
Okay.
horses to get really over muscled.
Okay.
And this community, the halter horse community, purposefully breeds this disease into animals, right? And it's all about looks. It's not about
Okay.
these are not horses that are used for anything really other than, showing them. And so, yeah, it has very much, I think to a lesser degree than what we see with the multitude of dog breeds. But yeah,
Yeah.
there have been cases where something that started out as a natural quality of the horse have been bred for vanity, for human gratification rather than the welfare of the animal. And as you can imagine, that kind of stuff really makes me mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because 'cause I'm just like, just the multiplicity of horse is already so, I mean, there's such a wide array of animals that fall under that umbrella. I just don't understand why you would try to destroy them.
I don't know.
But yeah, but I think, as you allude to, I think that happens whenever humans feel dominion over something
Oh,
or feel
yes.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
human tendency. It's pretty ugly.
Yeah, just why not let them be and enjoy them as they are. I mean,
Mhm.
really, why? Why do you have to do that?
Yeah, why do you have to do that? And just enjoy them as they are. And, having a haflinger as well, like a purebred horse, right? I think about these things a lot, but one of the things that the haflinger breed standard has done that I think has been wonderful is just trying to keep it to the standard that was set back in the 19th century, right? And like not messing with it, not messing with it. And they are really careful about preserving that heritage in a way that some other
Okay.
breeds are less so. So, yeah, just to nerd
Mhm.
out on you a bit about horse breeds.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely understand it. I mean, weren't they bred, for work?
Mhm.
Correct me if
Yep.
I'm wrong. I mean, they're
No,
workhorses.
they were bred for work and to be kind of an all-round family horse, the horse that can pull your cart to down the
Yeah,
mountain to the market, but that can
yeah,
also help you log or do the other
yeah,
things that you need to do. Yeah, so they're really
yeah,
I think the versatility is part of what's so neat about horses, and so
yeah.
when they try to breed that out, I'm sort of like, "Why?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One wonders. That's also the case. I often wonder because I watched a documentary about
Mm,
the Lipizzaner, the imperial whites, our imperial whites in
mm,
Vienna, and I mean
mm.
they were war horses.
Yeah.
They were
Yes.
used for battle, and
Yes.
it's fascinating when you watch what they do during their shows. I mean, that's what they
Yes.
do or what they are used for in battle to clean the
Yes.
battlefield, to make room, and I mean, I'm not a horse person, but when I see them, yes, I can understand that. Yes.
Yes, yes. Yeah, the intimidation and the power, and one of the things that I think is really cool about, the Lipizaners and sort of the haute école, the high school riding,
Yeah, or they
is
call,
that,
yeah, the
yeah,
high
haute
school
école,
of
yeah, the highest school of
horsemanship.
riding is that all of the movements are
Yeah.
based
Natural.
on
Yeah, they're
natural
natural.
things the horse
Yeah,
does, right, so you're just teaching them to do that on command, and if you watch horses in a pasture, they'll eventually do those movements
yeah,
on their own, which I think is just so that's neat. That's just
yeah.
neat,
That's
and the way that
fascinating.
those were adapted for war then,
Yeah,
those
yeah,
natural movements like the
yeah,
lavad and yeah, it's
yeah.
really cool. Mhm.
Yeah, and what I also heard because I didn't know that because as I said, I know nothing about horses, and I had to do my research for my book, and
Uh,
that's why I was
yes.
fascinated by watching this and what one of the higher ups, the German term is Bereiter, the
Mm.
writers in the Spanish riding school said they usually pair an experienced rider with a young horse and
Yes.
vice versa. So the experienced horse teaches the young rider, and
Ye
vice versa. And
yes.
that's I find it also interesting.
Mhm. Yes. There's a saying in the horse world, "Green plus green makes black and blue." And so when we talk about green horses, you want an experienced rider with a green horse, and then you want a green rider with a real schoolmaster, a horse that's gonna teach
Yeah.
them,
Yes.
and that's really the best way to create that partnership. Because yeah, if you have an
Yeah.
inexperienced horse and an inexperienced rider, someone's gonna get hurt. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've unfortunately seen that happen again and again and again.
Okay.
Um people are very misguided. They think that it's like a dog. They're like, "I wanna buy a young one and we'll grow up together." And it's like, "Mm-mm.
No.
Buy the
It's
older one who knows what they're doing."
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's wise. That's a wise decision, I think, also from the Spanish riding school. They know what they are doing, obviously. That's why they've
Yes.
been so
Yes, they
successful.
do. Yes,
They
they
know
do.
what they're doing. Yeah, absolutely. And I find it fascinating. And asking you about the writing process, um,
Mm.
what's for you personally the beauty of writing short stories?
Yes. Well, I think it's a great thing to finish something. And that's part of what keeps me coming back to the short story form. I also think that formally you can get really interesting in a short story in a way that maybe in a longer work it's a little more difficult to play with form, right? So you probably noticed reading the collection, I like to play with form and how the story is told. And so that's a large part of it, I think, for me, is that a short story can more easily show up as like a list or some sort of strange form that lend itself to. The other thing too is that I have tried to tackle longer pieces. I have a couple failed novels in the drawer, and I think that for me as a writer, plot is not a strong suit, right? I'm interested in form. I'm interested in tone and characterization. And so for me, like a short story can be about an idea, you know, or a concept. Whereas I have yet to figure out how to do that in a longer form. I always tell people I'm just waiting for the right thing to come along, right? A story that doesn't fit in a short story container in my mind. And then I'll write a longer piece. But I'm such a fan of short stories. I'm such a fan of short stories. Like, I love Laurie Moore. I love Edgar Poe. I love Karen Russell. I'm particularly drawn to writers who seem to resist longer work, I think. Like writers who live in that short space. I really enjoy. George Saunders is a good example, and I've been watching his shift to novels with interest because I think that he's just elongating short stories in an interesting way, right? And so that's really for me, I think part of it is an inability to write a longer thing or a perceived inability. But then also too, like there's just such playfulness in the short story. There's such, there's room for each of them to be their own separate thing. And then when you gather them together in a collection like this, particularly a themed collection where they all kind of speak to each other or vibrate against each other, I think that's just really neat. It appeals to the like collector in me or the collagist, like I like the idea of putting 12 pieces of work together and seeing how they speak to each other as well. And I think that, yeah, with longer forms, that's a little more difficult to do. Um, so yeah.
Understandable. And my next question would be, what does a short story require from the reader versus a novel? Because my
Mhm.
co-host, my absent co-host, the teacup always said, "Oh, before she started reading one book or the other with a collection of short stories, I don't know about short stories because they sometimes leave me unsatisfied, and I want an ending, and I don't get it, and I don't know about it. Should I really, and so on. What does it require from the reader?"
That's a really good question. I think that, sort of a comfort with ambiguity
Mm,
sometimes, which it sounds like your co-host struggled with a bit. Yeah, like a comfort with that ambiguity, a comfort with not knowing everything, with just
mm,
dropping into this world for a day or an afternoon and
yeah,
meeting these people.
yeah.
I think too, I find that short stories, they tend to be, or at least the way I write them, they tend to be kind of more about a concept that I want you to think
Mhm,
about or an idea that I want you to think
mhm,
about. So I don't know. I kind of think of short stories, like the experience of reading a short story is more like a meditation
mhm,
than, than sitting down with a novel and being sucked into that world, right?
yeah,
A short story is much more of a it's a singular utterance that's it's its own self-contained thing, and so often too, I think short story writers were trying to get you to think beyond the page. Like, we want you to put it down and keep ruminating, and keep thinking about it. And so that's what I would say, I think, is to come to short stories, be ready for a think, be
Yeah.
ready for a
Yeah.
in a way that a longer piece maybe does they have more space so they can maybe
Mhm.
do more that work for you. But yeah, and concision, I love concision. I
Okay.
like concision is everything to me.
Yeah, it does. You said novels usually does well. The writer does more for you. No, not so much a concept or just an idea you have to think on after you finished the novel. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, or often we don't have to. Let's put it that way. We don't have to, because as you said, the writer does it for you
Yeah.
most of the time. Not always, but
Mhm.
most of the time. Uh, and on the other hand, what does a short story then require from the author?
Mm. Patience. A lot of patience, because it takes a while to get them right. I
Mm,
don't think it's hard to finish a short story, but it's hard to get one right.
mm,
So you have to be willing to revisit it. You have to be
mhm,
willing to tweak it. Um, Sometimes that means coming at the story in a couple different ways until you realize which way is the best way to approach the material. And I think too, it requires sort of that willingness to continually start again. Like, when I talk to, people who specialize in longer forms, they tell me that that's the part that they just couldn't they're like, "You have to start over. Every
mhm.
couple weeks or every couple months, you have to start over." And I'm like, "Yeah, but, like, there's a joy in that for me. There's, like,
Okay.
the potential of the blank page and you know, the stack of stories accumulating that I feel are finished, and then the ones that are yet to come. Um, there's something really I feel like when I've tried to write longer works, it doesn't feel finished during the
Mm,
process at all. Like,
mhm.
it feels like the whole thing is this living organism that needs to be revisited and fed and played with and all this. Whereas, like, with a short story collection, it's like I can finish something and send that piece out,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
I can feel good that, okay, that part is done, Whereas I think that at least my experience of writing longer forms, I just feel like it feels so baggy and so, uh, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That might just be my habitual short story writer coming out. I'm just like, well, I like the sense of finishing things as I go too. I think that as a writer helps motivate me as well. It doesn't feel yeah.
Do yeah, do you think then that you said it's about getting it right, you need to get it right. Does it put, then because it's a shorter form, of course, and does it put more pressure then on the author than the long form? Because to get it right in a long form, you do have more time. You have to revisit it, of course you have, because, one draft isn't the end product. But with a short story, it's even more time pressing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I definitely feel like there's a point at which and see, and I think this is what keeps me writing, apart from, like, the research, which I have already mentioned that
Mhm,
I love, is that there's a point at which it just all kind of clicks into place and you know it's
mhm,
working.
mhm.
And I have yet to have that experience with a longer work, me personally. So, again, I think it's just, maybe someday, I won't rule it out, but I really love that, like, moment where you can tell the story has found its feet and that
Mhm,
it's gonna work, you know?
mhm,
And the more outlandish the idea, the more excited I get when I realize
mhm.
it's gonna work. So,
Okay.
like, the story about the boy in the plastic bubble with John
Mhm,
Travolta, it's sort of essayistic, it's sort of looking at this terrible movie and trying to make sense of it, and trying to make sense of what it has to say about disability and what it has to
mhm,
say about horses as symbols.
mhm.
Um, yeah, and when I got about halfway through that draft and realized, "Oh, I'm going to stick the landing," like a gymnast, like, I can do this. That's just That's the best feeling in the world, and I feel like I'm always chasing that feeling, you know? So one
Mhm.
challenge for a story writer is knowing when to walk away and knowing when you just need to push it a little further. You just need to take that risk. You just need to take that swing and see what happens, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do not have to worry about a plot arc in a short
Mm,
story.
no. No, which is my dirty secret, I think. I always tell people, I'm like, plot is my weakest it's my weakest thing, because I'm more interested in ideas. I'm more
Mhm.
interested in concepts and images, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so I like that you can build a short story around one climactic event,
Mhm.
basically, like
Yeah.
one big moment, whereas,
Yeah.
yeah, long form, you can't do that in the same way, you know?
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's absolutely true.
and then
So
I
do you
also
Yeah, yeah, go on.
I
Go
also
on.
wonder too if, again, the education system, it puts a premium on short stories as a form, like, when you're coming up through, like, MFA, PhD, all that,
Mhm.
th you're not writing novels typically, you're writing short stories, and you're being trained to write short stories because that's
Yeah.
just the way that the course works, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I often wonder too if that sort of attenuated my brain in a certain way.
Could be. I mean, it could
Could be,
be.
could
Yeah,
be.
but, when we all have to follow, the thread, even if you write a novel, a longer one. I mean, the story arc is different. Of course, it is different because when you write longer pieces, you have to set up more scenes. Let's put it that way. You have to set up
Mm.
more scenes and put them together in a way that it does make sense. Like
Yeah,
setting up the
yeah,
scenes for my recording, it has to make sense, and especially when you write them. I mean, I wanted to ask you, do you see this? You have to be spot on. You have to put the lights on. You have to put the camera on this one scene.
yeah,
And does it also work in your brain like that? Because I often feel that if I can't see it, if you know what I mean, if you can't
yeah.
see it, it I can't put it on paper or convincingly on paper.
Yes, I would agree. I'm a very visual person, huge, fan of film and television. I watch way too much television. And, you know, and then, of course, like, film in the academic sense, I'm really obsessed with, like, the silent era of film,
Mhm,
particularly.
mhm,
Um, yeah, and I do. I find that if I can't visualize it, I can't describe it, and so I've been fascinated recently by learning about people with aphantasia, people who can't picture things in their
mhm,
minds. Because
mhm.
to me, that's so alien to how
Yeah,
I do everything that I'm just like, I would love to meet a writer who has aphantasia and talk to them about, like, what is it like for you, you know?
yeah,
Because, yeah, it's so intensely visual to me. I'll see a scene in a certain way, or, with some of the stories in this collection, like, I'm writing toward a photograph or, you know, I'm taking a photograph as inspiration, and so that photograph becomes very much an image that I'm writing toward or an image that
yeah,
I'm, trying to capture everything around that
yeah,
that photograph, right?
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. I so hear you because it reminds me of one of my assignments I had as a student myself in before what we put A levels, Matura here
Mm,
in here in Austria, and there was this picture in our English book, and it was I don't know who painted it. Can't really say that, but it was a garden. And there was a woman in dressed like 19th century clothes, and we had to write a story about this picture. And I absolutely knew. I looked at the picture, and I absolutely knew what was going on in her head, or what was
right.
happening to her. Why was she there? What was she thinking? And what you know?
Yeah. 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 And I love that's part of why, like, not just archives, but museums are a huge source of inspiration for me because, yeah, I'll often have that reaction when I'm looking at an image, like a still image, especially.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, that expression's very interesting, and what
Yeah.
are they thinking at that moment, you know? And then particularly, like, when I find something that contradicts what I'm seeing in the photograph, like, with the Fred Loring photograph, he looks so comfortable and, like, sure of himself, and when I first saw that photograph, I thought, "Well, this must be a cowboy. This must
Mm.
be somebody who's utterly at home in the Old West," and then when I researched, I discovered, no, the opposite is true, and he's kinda performing in that photograph or, you know, and that really busted that story wide open for me because
Mm.
that's when I realized, okay, no, this is a story about trying to be something you're not, you
Mm.
know, whether that meant denying his sexuality or trying to go west and join this expedition, right? It's a
Mhm.
story about and also about masculinity and American
Mhm.
masculinity, which fascinates and horrifies me as well. So, it was a nice story to kinda get at some of those questions or those issues.
Yeah, I can understand that, given the recent events. It's sometimes a bit comical in a way, but yeah, sorry. Not meant to offend anyone, but it just feels that way. Sorry about that, dear listeners. And, what about dialogue in short stories? Have you also interest in script writing? Because setting
Mhm.
up scenes and just writing dialogue and or
Mhm.
mostly dialogue and how the scene should go, does it interest you?
It does, but I've never I wrote one play that got
Mhm.
staged, and it was kind of a weird this was back in undergraduate. It was kind of a weird play. Like, I think I was just trying to make it as strange as possible, and my friends staged it, and the stage directions were interpreted in some pretty hilarious ways. It was a lot of fun. There were oranges being thrown. It was very weird. It was very weird and very juvenile. Um, but yeah, I mean, I love to read scripts, as a means of, you know,
Mhm.
training ear for dialogue because I do
Mhm.
find dialogue difficult. I
Mhm.
really do, especially I think in when you're writing fiction, it's so tempting to use the dialogue to further your own aims, you know,
Mhm.
whether those plot or characterization, and it's like, that's not how people really talk though. And so, there's always sort of this dance between, "Okay, I need this dialogue to advance something in the story, but
Yeah.
I also want it to sound real."
Mm.
And you know, I think if you went through the collection, you'd notice that I use dialogue pretty sparingly, for that reason, I think, is because
Yeah.
it's so hard to write it and not cringe at it on the page,
Mm.
you know, and sometimes I write dialogue to make you cringe as well. Like, you know, like,
If
when
that's
I'm
yeah, well, if that's the purpose, yeah, why not?
yeah, like, when I'm writing about these bad movies or these old TV shows, like, part of the thing that fascinates me about them is how cheesy the
Yeah.
dialogue is and how, like, nobody talks like this, and so I'll try to include as much of that as I can when I'm trying to kind of poke fun at the medium in that
Mhm.
sense, but
Mm.
yeah, I find dialogue quite challenging. I really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, especially as you said, to make it sound real and not just
Mhm.
staged.
Right. Yeah, because if you listen to people, like, if you go somewhere and eavesdrop and listen to people, it's often hard to wrap your head around what they're talking about, you know? Like, people don't and now I'm doing that, you know, like, the way that I think we want them to in stories selfishly as
Yeah.
writers. We want them to, you know, pontificate, but in reality, if you want the dialogue to be realistic, it's like,
Mm.
yeah, really tricky. It's really tricky.
Yeah, especially if you want your readers to relate to your characters.
Yeah. Yes, and that's so hard. That's so hard. I always
Yes.
just figure I figure if I relate to them that someone out there might, so I try to make them as human to me as I can with all their flaws and their foibles, and then I figure,
Yeah.
well, if I connect, then someone else might, but it can be hard too when you're writing about people who do things that you wouldn't do, or yeah, or especially when it comes to animals, right?
Yeah.
When you're thinking about
Yeah.
people who are treating animals in a way that is utterly unfathomable to me.
Yes.
That's all interesting.
Yeah, the most innocent. The really
Mhm.
most innocent.
Yes. Yes. It's
Because
yeah, they're not part of our culture. They don't have the
exactly.
same yeah,
They have
um,
the bad luck to be part of it, whether they like it or not.
yes.
And
Yeah. And I feel like horses too. It's like, dogs are man's best friend, but I always say that horses are sort of man's forgotten best friend. Because when
Mhm.
you think about the sweep of history, so many of the things that we take for granted in
Yes, that's
modern,
true.
postmodern life could not have been built without
Yeah.
horses.
Yeah, true.
And yeah, and yet we kind of, we forget that. Like, it's fascinating to me that, like, if you go back a few generations, everybody in my family would have known how to ride a horse or would have known how to be comfortable around a horse, and now I'm the only one, because that skill is no longer valued. It's no longer commodifiable in the same way that it was. So,
Yeah,
I I
it's
I
true.
think about that a lot. I think about those kinds of things a lot. And then as a horse person as well, I'm fascinated by the fact that not much has changed in thousands of years. Like, the bridle that I put on my horse is pretty similar to the bridles that people in ancient Mongolia were using, and so I think it's always interesting when there's an area of human technology that we've just kind of, well, it's not broken, and we're not gonna we're not gonna try to keep it iterating because we already know this.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, and
Yeah,
so I'm fascinated
absolutely.
by that
Yeah.
as well.
It's always the tidbits when you look, as you said, the tidbits of history and those little parts. I mean, stirrups,
Mhm. Yes.
the
No, they don't
Mongols.
much at all.
I
Yeah,
mean,
if you go to a museum,
it's
it's
incredible
mhm.
when you think of it and what people were capable of doing on a horse. I mean, it's always fascinating.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
yes, just let it stand still, then we can talk. Otherwise, no, no. Not you said, I mean, beautiful creatures, dogs are man's best friend, and cats our furry overlords. That's
Yes.
the way it
Yes,
is,
they
people.
are.
I
Yes,
know
they
what I
are.
am. I'm just staff, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
aware
I
of
am
that.
I am also staff to my cats as well.
There you go.
Yeah. I think
There you
writers,
go.
I think they assign a cat when you become a writer. It's like the cosmic that you are assigned a cat.
Probably, probably.
Yeah, feels like to me anyway.
Yeah, and we do know that the Earth can't be flat, because if the Earth were flat, then the cats would have pushed everything off it.
It's
That's the
true.
truth, dear listeners. That's how it works.
That's how it works. I mean, that alone is the surest
Yes,
confirmation.
yes,
I agree.
absolutely.
I agree.
Jess, can I also ask you for your advice for any other aspiring short story author out there?
Ooh, ooh. Uh, read. I'm sure people say this on the podcast all the time, but read the masters of short stories. Read John Cheever, read Poe, read people who are really pushing the form, and realize that the form is so much more elastic than you might be taught in school. Like, when you read the classic short stories, they're very much kind of 5-act structure, right? But the form is so elastic, and I really believe that it's a container that can hold just about anything, if you're willing to push the boundaries. So that would be my first advice, and then my other advice would be, particularly young writers. I think that there are so many great, like, undergraduate literary journals that only publish people who are enrolled in undergraduate. So, like, I always tell my students, I'm like, that's where I got my start, in a journal called the Allegheny Review, publishing when I was 18. And I always tell my students, I'm like, start there. That way you're not competing against the people who have been doing it for 30 years. You're only competing against your peers, right? Um, and also just, poetry. Read a lot of poetry. Because I really feel like the boundaries between genres are more malleable than we're taught, you know? And sometimes I'll start my writing day by just reading some poetry, because the way that poets are playful with language, I think we need more of that in fiction. And particularly in the short story form, I feel like there's room for that playfulness. So I would recommend to aspiring short story writers to become fans of poetry as well. Yeah. And really just bathe yourself in that language. And yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And may I also ask, what are your plans for the near future? What can your readers look forward to?
Yeah, well, I just there's a brand new story out in a journal called Last Syllable that's online, and it's called Canis Ex Machina, and it's about the three dogs in American fiction who are all named Tiger and all show up and in a story and then disappear. And yeah, and so once I discovered that that was true, I had to write a story to explain this strange phenomenon. So that just came out, and that's part of a collection that I'm working on. It's similar in approach to Horse Show, but I'm throwing open the floodgates to all kinds of species of animals. So I'm writing about eels and wombats and lions and all kinds of things. And really, it's been an interesting challenge to kind of shift that animal awareness to species that I'm less intimately familiar with, right? And yeah, it's been really, really fun.
You're not familiar with, are you also including species which do not exist in the United States? Because I know of an absolute interesting species of animals that do not exist in the United States but exist in what is happening in Europe.
Mm.
Hedgehogs.
Hedgehogs, I love them. I absolutely love them. I'd have to kind of I know, like, Miss Tiggy Winkle from Beatrix Potter,
Yeah.
right? I have to see if there's any historical hedgehogs that I could include, but yeah, they are sort of premier European fauna, I think. They couldn't be cuter, and the idea
Yes,
that
they
they
are.
just wander around in your gardens is so magical to me.
Yes, we have hedgehogs in our garden,
Oh,
and I
that's
think 2 years ago we had a family. They had two little ones.
oh, I bet that was
They're so
darling. Yeah.
cute. That's cute.
People here keep them as pets, and I had a friend who was breeding them who offered me one, but I just once I read about what they need, I just sort of felt like,
Mm,
I can't do this." I'm like, "I can't do this. This feels
no,
wrong."
they're very and they're very useful animals actually.
Mhm.
All
Yeah,
the
I'm sure they
animals you do not want to have in your garden.
yeah, yeah, they
So
eat all the pests and yeah. Oh,
yes,
that's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
So cool.
yeah, they are. Uh, Jess, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
Mm. Well, I would say that even if you're not a horse person, okay, even if you're not a horse person, this book, I think it has something for you in it. I really it's using horses as kind of a door to talk about other
Mm,
things. And so what I tell people is that when you hear the phrase horse book, probably a lot of stereotypes come to mind. None of
yeah.
those are in this book.
That's true.
So
That's true. That's true, dear listeners. Absolutely.
yeah, so that's really what I would say is to give it a shot. You might be pleasantly surprised by this horse book.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Jess, it was absolutely wonderful having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a delight.
It absolutely was. Please don't go away. Wait for me in the green room. I will be with you shortly.
Okay.
Dear listeners, I do hope you enjoyed this episode as much as my guest and I did. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I do hope you will tune in for another episode. Until next time.